Yeah, thank you. Hello, I'm Nathan, and I go by Myobi online. So if you see Myobi, it's either me or some jerk who stole my name. I used to work at Wunderlist as a to-do list app, and I worked on the real-time sync stuff. So I currently work at Microsoft because they bought Wunderlist, and so that's what happens when they buy you. Thank you for having me in Sweden. We have an emoji for the flag. I hope it's the right flag. I get a little real nervous when like I pick things like that. But either way, I really like coffee. So if you want to have a coffee with me, we could do that. I'm available to have coffee anytime. Also, I write my own presentation software, so this could all completely explode at any moment, and I apologize if that happens. I hope it doesn't. That's how I feel about that. But at the same time, I really like my own software. I like the way it looks, and I don't know. Yeah. Either way, this is what it looks like to me. Um, and just so you know, it's a JavaScript thing. It's written in. I use Chew, which is a JavaScript library, and I always mention it because I really like it. So you should go to this website and use this JavaScript library. Yeah. I haven't built an author yet, so I actually design all my slides in Sketch, which is not a good program to design slides in. It has no abilities to design slides, and so I spend a lot of time basically laying out text over and over again and making it colorful. Either way, though, you can use it if you want after the glowing endorsement I just gave it. It's open source, and I will hopefully make it better over time. So, okay, we can actually talk about Elixir now. So Elixir is my favorite Lisp. I hope it's your favorite Lisp. It's the only Lisp I like to use. I don't like other Lisps. Erlang is a very good language, very good runtime. And this is my controversial statement. I think it's the only truly object-oriented language because of processes, right? And processes do what objects do. They encapsulate behavior and state. And so the whole point of my talk is I want to put everything into processes. And so if you know anything about Erlang, you've heard of processes or actors or whatever. I like them. I want to put everything into them. And so basically every talk I give is what could I put into processes that I have not put into processes yet. And if I give a talk again, then I would do the same thing. So stateful webhooks is something that I don't think exists. I don't know. I've asked people if they've heard of it, and they've said no. If you don't know what a webhook is, it just like when there's a lot of examples, but like when you push a commit to GitHub, they can post to a URL. And it looks kind of like this, right? Like a request comes in, you route it somewhere, you do something with what got posted, and you return a response. But I want it to look like this. I want to have state, and I want to return a new state, and then next time I want to get that state back. I just think this will be fun. I think it would be cool. And I originally thought it's going to be easy because it's HTTP and we have Gen server. Done. Done, right? So I did the most important thing, which is I went and bought a domain immediately. I didn't write any code. And I got the best domain. Seriously, best domain. whatthehook.com, which is fantastic. And it has a very good acronym. It's the best. Yeah. I wish actually that was a website you could get, because this would be a great website. But you can't get that right now. So if you want to work on that, let me know. If you want to become a registrar, I would buy that domain from you. So either way, maybe is there a beta soon? No, there's a beta sometime. Like who knows when I will actually have this ready. So the whole point then is really we want to transform a request that comes in, do something with it. What does transform mean? Instead of telling you, I'm going to show you a funny video of a robot that can ride a bicycle, hopefully. It's amazing. You're going to love this. It's a real robot, and it rides a bicycle. Yeah, and it's going to do it again, and I'm just going to let it play because you're probably bored already, but yeah. I like how much time the programmer spent on the wave, like so that it could wave at people. Yeah, hold on, wait. It's the best. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Okay. So should probably actually present something. So like I said, oh yeah, hold on. This is what happens when you make your own stuff. GitHub commit comes in. What are you going to do with it? What's the transformation you can do? You could post it to Slack, Slack already supports this, but hey, we could do it ourselves, right? That's actually a very difficult code example, so we're not going to talk about that. I will increment a number because that's an easy code example to talk about. This is the code I want to write. I have a state, I want to add one to it, and I want to reply with that state, right? This is what I want to do every time I push a commit to GitHub. That's a really dumb thing to do. You're probably like, what's the point? Why build this? And I would say, don't be so confrontational. This is actually another big part of everything I do and why I like processes is because I hate monolithic databases. I think every user should have their own database, and it's based on my experience at Wunderlist and the word scaling. It's just difficult to scale large databases, and I've lost a lot of sleep to it. And so I don't want to do it anymore. And so I would like to have little tiny databases everywhere, and I think that would scale better and everything. Either way, most apps are just a UI for a database anyway. Everything's Excel. You could write most apps in Excel, right? You could just use Microsoft Excel. And so, yeah. As an aside, I don't actually want every user to have their own database because if I share something with you, you shouldn't go into my database to get access to it, and I shouldn't go into yours. So there should be another third database that is shared, and that would be something that we could both access. So that's a much longer statement than saying I think everybody should have their own database. Like I said, I think it would be very scalable. I think it would be very durable over time because I think data loss would happen in much smaller, if you lost a database, you would only lose one or two peoples at a time, right? It would be easier to distribute across the world, right? You wouldn't have to worry about how do I replicate a table. It'd be like, how do I replicate, a map or something? And I think it would be easier to do security. Since the user's talking just to their own database, I think end-to-end encryption would be easier. Either way, you're probably like, this has nothing to do with webhooks. Either way, I'm very lazy. And I don't want to do database scaling anymore. So, okay, so we're good. So again, we're talking about Erlang, right? Erlang conference. I should focus. So I think then every user should have a process in the system, and then that process's state could be the database. And again, we're done. Yeah, solved the problem. The problem is there's some things that are missing. The first thing that's missing is distributed processes, and you're probably thinking that's not missing, but it is. There's a thing called global. It's fantastic. It's great. It's eventually consistent. And that causes me problems because that means I either end up with inconsistent routing or inconsistent state sometimes. And I just don't want to have that. I want to write the code where I add 1, and I know that I added 1 to the number I returned last time. And the problem is if I don't know that I'm getting 4, maybe I get a 3 again, then it doesn't work. So I can't use global. You're probably thinking Elixir has a registry for registering processes, right? And it does, and it's very good, and it works on a single node, so it's not distributed, right? So, of course, I wrote something called ZK registry, which uses the Elixir registry on each node, and then it uses Zookeeper to keep track of which nodes have which processes running. And right now, it actually acquires a distributed lock per process, which probably doesn't scale, and I don't know. I haven't tested how scalable it is, but it would be easy to change it to be a lock per partition, which is if you went to the Forgets talk yesterday, he talked about how they do partitioning and stuff like that. That's what everybody does, and people who have partition maps a lot of times use Zookeeper to maintain it. So this isn't crazy to talk about. If you don't know about the registry or anything, you basically just name your processes like this. You just use via. And then you can give it any name you want. Is the little second part where it has underscore. So it just allows you to give your process a more fancy name than just a string or an atom or something. So it makes it easier to do routing and things like that. So the other thing that's missing is persisted processes. Like if a process crashes in Erlang, then that state is gone. And a lot of people have solved this problem. This is something you could just solve manually. You could just, when state changes, you could post it somewhere. I'm trying to generify it, so I made a gen persisted server, which just right now is a behavior that has a get and a put. And so you can implement that, and you can back it up to anything. I have tried to back up to S3, and that works. Back up just to Postgres, which is interesting, and that works. It could be anything. The only important thing is when the process boots, it just needs to read from storage to get its initial state. That's it. So that works. So at that point then, so request comes in for a webhook, process boots, reads its initial state into memory, right, from some backup, and then it can increment the number. It could know, we were at 4 last time, right? and I can use the ZK registry to make sure that my routing is always consistent in my cluster, right, across machines. Another thing that I thought was missing is auto-expiring processes. I don't actually want, like, if I boot a process, let's say every user does have their own database, I don't want all that in memory all the time, because maybe the person hasn't been online for a week or something. You know, I like this idea because what it would mean is that however many processes are active in the system, that's actually your active users, and that would be very interesting to see that. So like, people use your thing more, you have to pay more money, people use your thing less, you pay less money. I think that's interesting. I would like to see that. It turns out this is built in. I didn't know this, and so I wanted to show you. You can actually just pass a timeout, and then if your process, so when you initialize your process, and if it doesn't receive a message in that amount of time, it will it'll time out, right? That's very interesting. The timeout is not like persistent, so every time you get a message, you have to like reset the timeout. You have to say again, like, okay, now, you know, if I don't get any messages within this time, this I guess could be good. Maybe like you could have different timeouts depending on the type of message or something. I don't know. If the time does run out, your handle info callback on your gen server, if you know what that is, will get called. At that point, you should probably just back up the state and go dormant, right? And that would be very nice. So we'll talk about really the important part, though, which is when a request comes in, what do I do with it? And so transform, right? What's great is I have another video, right, related to robots, but this one's even better, and you're really going to enjoy this. So I'm gonna show you this really cool kids with these costumes here at this Comic-Con thing. So I don't, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I don't know about you, but I really like that. So yeah, we should, I don't know why we don't have costumes like that right now, like here. It's amazing. Either way, when we want to transform things, if I'm writing a webhook service, like if I'm writing a service for other people to write webhook code, then I need them to send me the code to do, right? So when a GitHub commit comes in, what do you want to do with it? You want to post it to Slack, or you want to do something else? So I'm going to let you write the code, which means JavaScript, right? Everybody, I don't know why, but anytime there's user-supplied code, it's JavaScript, which means we got to run node, which means in Erlang or Elixir, you do a port. A port is an amazing thing that is not what it sounds like. It's not like port 8000. It's something else that I don't know. Someone in Erlang invented, I guess, and like no one else. I've never seen it before, and I've never seen anything like it. And a lot of things don't work that way, but that's what you have, and that's how you talk to external processes in a way where you know that if your gen server dies, the process will die. If your process dies, your gen server will die. They're linked together. Either way, I have written some JavaScript to run like a little server, and this is the command I can run in my terminal to boot the server, and I want to run that when the gen server boots, right? That's what I want to do, and this is how you do it. It's very simple. You just do port.open, right? And then a bunch of crap. So either way, this is the same command as this, but to spawn it as a linked process to your whatever the current process is. So a gen server that is either the user database or the webhook or whatever, right? Ports, once you get them running, you can send things to them with this port.command. You have to convert your term to a binary before you send it, and there's a thing built in to do that. And you can also, when you get things back, you can do binary to term, but be sure there's like a safe flag you need to put, or else it can like be any term, which could be terrifying. You don't want to do that. So I did this, and I wrote some JavaScript to then, on that side, basically take whatever I get in standard in, pipe it into something that I've called a port over there, which is very confusing, and I should have called it something else. And then whatever the port does, pipe that back to standard out. And that's how ports work in Erlang. So if I say, hey, node, here's a message, it'll go through this port class I've made, and then whatever that thing does in this callback function, which right now all it does is send back OK echo, and whenever I sent it, that'll come back to Erlang. It's very simple, right? No, it's not. Node has a stream package, luckily, and it actually has a type of stream called a transform stream. And so I was like, well, that's very nice. That's exactly what I wanted to do. And it's incredibly boring. You have to you get these chunks of bytes basically, and you have to figure out is it a message? Is it 2 messages? Is it a message and a half? It's very boring, and that's why I have the comment. Boring stuff, right? It really is. But it's all on GitHub, so if you really wanted to be bored, you could look at it. So that's probably what you're thinking. That's what I'm thinking. Either way, we haven't even gotten to the part where I run user-supplied JavaScript. I just booted Node, right? And so what do? If you want to run someone else's JavaScript, what do? Sadly, there's a package in JavaScript called VM, right? And this is how you should feel about it. You should feel like that. It's terrifying. But you can actually create a new V8 context, compile code from a string, and then execute that code in that context. Luckily, they have a timeout, which is very nice because they can't do a while loop that just goes forever and locks everything up. This is absolutely terrifying. Yeah, so you shouldn't do it. But it's like I said, it's in GitHub, and I will launch this service at some point. There are a million security issues, a lot. There's more security issues than a human could probably identify. I found this on actually the Google Chrome website, where they were basically giving up. They're like, we can't protect you. Literally. They're like, you cannot run code you don't trust in the same process as code you do trust. That's what they've decided. So when they run user-supplied JavaScript, they boot a separate process, have it do it, and then it basically phones back out. And what that really means, oh yeah, this is the URL that you'll never remember or write down, but that's where I found that. So what it really means is I need to create a node per count. That way, if you want to hack yourself, go ahead. I don't care. But it would be an incredibly bad idea to share node VMs between accounts, because someone will figure out how to do it, and you probably wouldn't even know they were doing it. Turns out, of course, I do a lot of work, and someone else has already done it. There's also another language called Lua, which is very similar to JavaScript in that it's prototypal. They're the only 2 prototypal languages I know about. This person on Medium, JPIEPKOW, wrote an article with this title, which is Arbitrary Code Execution Safely with Lua and Elixir, and I wish I had read this before I wrote all the stuff that I just showed you. Either way, again, this is a Medium thing. You should go there and do it. I still want to do JavaScript, and I already wrote the code, so I'm just going to go with it. But it's good to know that this is a thing that other people are trying to do, which is to run user-supplied code from Erlang. So hopefully we will eventually have a few examples running in production of how to do it. So the other thing we have to do is routing, right? So we've got the transformers down. We can run JavaScript. I could send that JavaScript, this is the request that came in and the previous state. What are you going to do with it? But how do I route? Easy, right? Phoenix, right? Just HTTP, we're done. So I just decided the URL segment will just be the process ID. It's just a binary, and so I can use it for that. So this is the path, right? And so this part of the path is process ID, and you can just make it up. You could just type in whatever you want. And I have this idea that if you wanted to do a stateless webhook call, you could use the underscore, because I don't know, maybe that's good. And you're probably thinking, what is this good for? Maybe games. Games always are state, and the state kind of moves forward. And so I just keep inventing fancy ways to do Tic Tac Toe. I feel like that's what I do. It turns out Tic Tac Toe is actually really difficult to implement in this webhook system, so I'm not going to show you code related to that. But if you were to implement a game and you were to use something like this, whether it's webhooks or just gen server processes, you could have 1 process per player, right? And they could talk to each other. Then you could have a process to match them up. So if it's a 2-player game, you want to pick 2 people and be like, you're playing a game now. And also a process per game. But then everybody's talking to each other, and it's very nice. That's actually a really good way to do it. And in every talk I give, I always mention Orleans, which is a Microsoft research project that's open source now. And that's what they use to make Halo, and it works exactly like that. So every game session is an actor. Every player is an actor. There's a matchmaking actor. There's all these different actors, and that's actually how Halo works. So when you get on your, what is it called, Xbox One now, and you play the games, that's how some of the games work. So I also think you could use it to make like chat bots, because I find a lot of these bots, they don't have memory. They're really annoying. Like you ask them a question, they give you an answer, and then if you ask another question, like it doesn't know what you've asked before. And so I really wish like they had memory. And so this could be a way to do that, is you could just remember so many things, right, from the past. I think that would be really useful. Hopefully maybe you know something that would be useful, and when question time comes up in a second, you could just tell me. So that would be really helpful. Thank you for that. Just a few other things I wanted to mention at the end of this is, could we actually run Elixir that the user wrote? Like, would that be possible? I don't know. Has anyone ever done that? If you know, will you please tell me? Another thing is, like, since it's JavaScript right now, like, should I implement something like local storage or like a little database, so you don't just have your webhook state or your gen server state, but you also have maybe like a shared database between all the webhooks or between all the users? Is that a good idea? Would people understand that? And you could take it further and actually do like a more like interesting database where you can do queries and stuff, or is there something else that should exist in a system like this? Is it even a good idea to try to make it feel similar to the browser, or is that just going to confuse people that it looks like the browser but it's running on the server, or is that already so confusing that it doesn't matter? Should there be a way to do like a client, so like a phone app or a web page, and then sync with the server, or could we use like PouchDB for that? I don't know. So hopefully in a second you'll tell me. I'm going to ask you to ask questions. This is technically the URL where all the crappy code I've written is, and if you want to look at it, or if you want to run it, you can. I can show you a demo, actually, if you want, of hopefully, if it's still running on my computer, we'll see. With curl, right? Okay. So this is the code of the webhook. This is what I have I have some Postgres on just a hooks table, right? And there's a code field. And this is the string that's in that database field. And I have an API that has no password, so that's why I didn't launch this yet. And you can see here, I think I've already run it. Yeah, so I just put the current state in a header called hook state. And you can see it's literally like the request is coming into Phoenix. It figures out, okay, where's A, right? Go find that gen server if it's running. If not, boot it. That thing's going to boot Node. It's going to compile the code. It's going to run it. That's crazy. I think, let's do one I haven't done. So like, and yeah, so it boots up Node really quick. Like that's a new Node VM. So, oh, I did A again, hold on, yeah. That's confusing. Yeah, so there you go. It does technically work, right? So I guess that's good. Cool, right? Okay, I'm done. Oh yeah, man. I want to do questions, but before we do questions, I just want to say, like, just don't make like a long statement that's not a question, because everybody hates that. Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Nathan. It's excellent.